The tie. How did it come about that the necktie ended up being that kind of symbol in Mennonite culture?
Well, it was our resistance to modernization and vanity, because a necktie is only to attract attention to you. It doesn't have any function.
Okay.
The same reason why conservative Mennonites use hook and eyes rather than buttons, because all you need is a hook and eye to get your jacket closed, and you put a button in there, you got that shiny thing trying to draw attention to yourself.
Where is the crossover line between Mennonites and Amish?
That's a longer.
It's the hook and eye. That's the crossover point.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So the hook and eye is what the Amish would use.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Doug and I are clearly crossed the line.
You cross the line and you use buttons, yeah.
In more than one way.
How did they take the stand against buttons?
Against buttons?
Yeah. What was
probably buttons came along, and it was another one of these modern conveniences that drew attention to yourself.
Okay.
So there was no reason to adopt it. Hook and eyes work perfectly well.
What about the horse and buggy versus an automobile?
Once again, the horse and buggy works perfectly well. The automobile costs a lot of money and wastes a lot of energy. And actually, an Amish bishop told me that the advantage of the horse and buggy is you get to know people within the range of your horse and buggy.
Okay.
You live in your community, you work in your community, you are a community.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get a car, you can be working, 60 miles away, or relating to people 60 miles away, and then you're ignoring your immediate community and your local thing. But part of it was just, this was a modern new convenience, and they wanted to keep to the old ways.
Okay. So when the Amish were founded, was that in the 1700s?
Yeah, it would have been 1600s.
1600s.
1525 would have been, I think, is the beginning of the Anabaptist, of which both Mennonites and Amish were a part. And then the Amish broke off later. And actually, I think the issue really between Bishop Ammon and the rest of the Mennonites was that Bishop Ammon felt that it was wrong to have Sunday school.
Okay.
Do a watered down version of the gospel for children.
Okay.
They had to get the full strength stuff. None of this, watering things down for children.
Okay, so that because Ammon, that's they called Amish.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I would jump in with a very quick, like so many things, I think there are more than one side to everything. And I think the good part of the Amish hook and eye is, as you said, Doug, it's the small little tender community of which we really love each other. We have a wonderful little tender community, and we're caring and loving. The downside, and many things in life have different aspects. The downside is I think it tends to be an obsessive compulsive need just to be tribal and to be different. So I think there are two aspects. I think it's, I think part of it is just like, we are separate, we are different. And so those, I would say there are two aspects to it.
Yeah, I have known some Hasidic Jews over the years, and I'm a friend of a Hasidic rabbi, Cohen, and I know that they have a certain fascination for the Amish, actually.
We should get them together. There you go. There's our initiative. Get an Amish Hasidic dialogue going.
Yeah, I think they sort of identify with the tribalism and the religious fundamentalism.
Well, I have taken several Iranian diplomats to visit with Amish leaders in Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
when they were in New York, and I was taking them to Akron. I would also take them to meet with the Amish, and it was interesting. They really seemed to bond very well with the Amish.
Oh.
It's very patriarchal. It's very community oriented, very strong socialist orientation.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget. I was working for MCC at the time, and we were having trouble with because MCC cans a lot of meat and chicken, and we give it away in Muslim countries.
Okay.
And because they are not labeled halal, in some countries, it's really difficult. You know, they won't accept it, even though they're really hungry because it's not labeled halal. So I had asked, you know, some of my Muslim friends if it was, you know, what was required for it to be halal. And they said, well, you know, the imam has to be there and say a special prayer as you are slaughtering the cow. So I was with an Iranian diplomat, and I was with an Amish farmer. And so the diplomat asked the Amishman, he said, do you have any special prayer that you say when you slaughter a cow? And he said, no, we try to live in prayer, but there's no particular prayer that we would say when we would slaughter a cow. And then we asked him, he said, if an imam was there and said a prayer while you slaughtered a cow, would that be okay? And he said, yes, of course, we would welcome anybody saying a prayer while we were, but unfortunately, I could never convince MCC to do it. Partly because MCC had a tradition of writing on the cans of meat in the name of Christ.
Okay.
And to Muslims, that seemed like evangelism. And I said, well, you know, we could simply change it to in the name of God. You know, Amish and Mennonites also believe in God, and we could do that. But unfortunately, the Mennonite committees that organized this, the canning of the beef, were unwilling to change the labels from in the name of Christ to in the name of God. So we have never, MCC has never produced halal canned meat, despite my efforts.
And the Muslims don't recognize Jesus as Christ.
No, but they do recognize him as a great prophet. So there's no problem with that. And when I pointed that out to one of my Muslim friends, and I said, you know, Muslims love Jesus. Why is it offensive if you have a can of meat that says given in the name of Christ? And he said it's because of its missionary implications.
Probably what do you call it? The one when they went to the Richard Lionheart went to the Middle East, and the Crusaders. Maybe it has associations with the Crusaders.
Probably. But anyhow, it was interesting to see how Iranians and Amish really felt very comfortable in each other's communities and each other's conversations. It was.
Yeah, no, it's again, it brings back like the discussion about the mystics and what they have in common.
Yeah.
So on that level, they can find commonality, and you know, from a peacemaking point of view, commonality is very important. When people can live in commonality and respect each other for their differences.
Yeah.
Because the basic values are the same.
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to tap into, where people can find commonality. And here in America, one basic value is that we like to live in peace and prosperity and take care of our families.
Well, Doug comes from a distinguished father, and his father was a distinguished Mennonite pastor that I still remember. So if Doug happens to have that plain coat handy, that might be a good bridge with your dad.
You could be dressed in that tomorrow.
Well, I do have an Amish jacket, but it's more of an outdoor jacket, still with a hook and eyes. But I think it'd be a little warm for wearing it in my dining room here. Did
you deviate from the straight and narrow with your life?
It depends on who you're talking to.
Okay.
It was interesting. I was estranged from my father for quite a period of time because he wanted me to become a minister and I wanted to do peace work.
Okay.
And he said, well, Mennonites believe in peace, but the really important work is to save souls. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the differences that we had between ourselves probably until the last month of his life. But
okay.
After he had his heart attack and was recovering, had a near-death experience, he actually came around to really bless me and say that my peace work had been a blessing to the church and to the world, and my Jewish wife had been that was the other thing he couldn't quite accept earlier. My Jewish wife had also been a blessing to me and to our family and to our extended family. But he only was able to articulate that in the last month of his life after a near-death experience.
But you were able, you had family gatherings where you
yes.
and your wife were there, so.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing. At the beginning, he would ask, is Bobby going to become Mennonite or are you going to become Jewish? And I said, well, neither, because we both worship the same God and we carry similar values. So she'll remain Jewish and I will remain Mennonite. And he, there was a few attempts to try to convert her by arguing from Old Testament scriptures that Jesus was the Messiah. And poor Bobby, her theological education was so bad because her father didn't believe that girls should be bas mitzvahed.
Okay.
So she had no idea, but she would just smile politely and everything. And the interesting thing was, theologically, he knew that she was going to hell.
Okay.
Because that was what his theology taught him. But in practice, he didn't treat Bobby any different than his other 5 Mennonite daughters-in-law. They were all treated exactly the same, loved and accepted in the family, even though he had this theological thing that she couldn't make it to the kingdom of heaven. But even that, by the time he died, he was ready to include her.
So he cared so much for her that he really wanted to make sure that she got to heaven.
Yeah, I guess so. And it's partly the cognitive dissonance. I mean, he had a theology, but in practice, he knew she was a good person. He treated her just like all of his other daughters-in-law. And, she was always a part of our extended family. There was never, and we have a very large and very close extended family.
When you said you were estranged from your father, it sounds like you were basically treated well by him all the time.
I was, yeah. We just had our theological differences.
Okay.
It was never really estranged. Just he had wanted me to become a minister.
Right.
And I had wanted to do peace work. And those were two different routes, but in the end, he was able to accept that they could be the same.
Well, I mean, it seems like peace work is one form of ministry.
Absolutely. And actually, after he died, actually, it was in the Midwest, and I actually got ordained by a very progressive Mennonite congregation out there as a peace pastor.
Okay.
So in the end, I did become ordained and become a minister, and actually they said my ministry was to be peace.
Okay. And that's what we're doing in grassroots peacemaking. We are advocating the benefit of peace.
Yes, absolutely.
Can we get a blessing from Mats before the meeting is over? Do you have a blessing to offer, Mats?
Am I ordained to give blessings? I'll be happy to bless you both.
Well, I think in the spirit of Rumi, we will be open to the Spirit tomorrow. And the Spirit, I think, will bless our work.
I think so too. I'm very much agree with that point. Absolutely. I think the Spirit is with us now and will be with us as you push buttons tomorrow morning. And I think you'll the Spirit will lead the way when you got to push that critical button, Matt. You're going to do okay.
I think, I mean, Doug is going to be responsible for the questions, but I may put in a question once in a while. But
sure, absolutely.
And I'm trying to, actually, one thing I was thinking about was I have a screen share here that I can do, which is this one, which basically is Rotary Stands for Tolerance, which is a statement by Paul Harris, the founder of Rotary. Mm-hmm. And this picture was one of the earliest grassroots peacemaking meetings that we had in 2014, where we invited the ambassador of Palestine to come and speak, and we're on the third floor.
There, yeah.
We're on the, what is it, the 10th floor, or what is it?
Yeah, I think that is the 10th floor. Yep.
Yeah. So that's, and that's basically how we ended up, you know, how we evolved. And if we had too many people, because usually we had between 25 and 40 people, we could easily fit in there. But if we ended up having more, like in the first meeting with the Iranian ambassador, we had 97 registered. We were on the second floor. So,
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. By the way, I did record. I told you I turned on the recording button, so our conversation is recorded.
Well, Matt, I'm working now on figuring out how to put the recording on my website. So if you have that. You're busy with other things, but that's still my
between now and tomorrow. But you know, I would not release this conversation without anybody's approval, of course. But I just realized as we were into our conversation that I had turned it on just to test it, and then we got into this conversation, and then I looked down and I said, "Hey, I forgot to turn it off."
Yeah. Well, and I'll also see whether or not I was able to record separately.
Okay.
Okay.
I have no problem.